Perfection. All right, everybody, we're going to get going here right about now. I'm going to fade to black, and then we'll get started. Actually, let me do the standby. There's that. Okay. Getting started now. You good, Lexi?
Yep.
All right, starting in. Oop, wrong one. Starting in 5, 4, 3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for September 18th, 2023 for the next hour or so. Let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, we get some hints at the power of the Switch 2, and fans think they may have spotted an early Switch 2 game. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Lex Luddy, everybody. Lexi, how are you doing?
Grubb, I am so fucking tired, but you know what? Uruguay lost to France in the Rugby World Cup, and they're the best team to ever play. They're,
of course.
Uruguay is my new best friend. Japan is no longer my second favorite team. Uruguay is now my new best friend forever.
This how much headbutting happens in rugby? Like, so I look at rugby players and like they'd be good at headbutting.
That is the thing that they are like trying to get out of the game. They're like, hey, maybe if these men who aren't wearing helmets are taking unprotected headshots, maybe that's bad. Maybe that's not great for their health. That is something they're very strict on now, where if you even you get anywhere near the head, you're off the field for 10 minutes.
It turns out even without helmets. Turns out with helmets doesn't make that much of a difference either.
It turns out if you have a helmet on, you're kind of just rattling around the brain inside of another box.
Exactly, yeah. And you feel you're more protected, so you're willing to put more on the line. It's like, I guess good and bad, the give and take, yin and yang, and all that stuff. That's not great. I've never really watched rugby. I think I've seen it on TV. I would watch any sport. But it's like, I'm kind of stuck with what they put out in front of me on ESPN when I was a kid. So that meant the normal sports here in the United States, and then badminton really late at night on ESPN2. And that was about it.
So the good news is the next World Cup will be on in the USA.
Ooh.
And you guys fucking love a World Cup. You don't care what it is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not. Yes.
You'll just go to a stadium and hang the fuck out. We can go drink, absolutely. Day drinking, because it's a sporting event. Yeah, that's the... Yeah, so I really hope that, a bunch of New Zealanders and French people have to go to Ohio for, their matches or whatever, because that sounds like their version of hell.
Yep, come on, let's go New Zealand. You know what they say, Cleveland, the New Zealand of America, in terms of its beauty, its culture, its food. I'm super into sports right now. It was just something that people who are into sports say, because I was watching that Colorado game. Deion Sanders is incredible. It's so amazing to watch him just take over an entire sport because he decided he want to, and he's got his kids and on his team and stuff like that. It was very dramatic, very good game. If anyone's never watched college football before, don't start. It's crazy. There's no reason to watch college football other than if you're a crazy American, which I am. I can't help it. But yeah, good weekend, and then the Lions lost. So then it stopped being a good weekend. I got very frustrated because they were supposed to win that game easily. Lex, you've been playing anything? You've been catching up on any games? Because I'm still kind of playing Armored Core, even though I thought it was getting pretty close. It's like, oh no, there's a whole nother chapter here. Which I remember when Mike was reviewing it, he mentioned, he's like, I thought I was getting to the end, and then there was a lot more. I'm like, okay, yeah, that happened to me too. How about you? What are you playing?
I've been playing shockingly little. Last week on Monday, my computer, which I use for everything, my laptop, died to water damage going into college on my first day of my second week. So that was great, and I got super stressed out about that, and I wound up getting sick that week, and I felt like shit, so I wound up playing through all of Yakuza Kiwami 2.
Yeah!
Yeah, the newest of video games, which, there's probably more effective ways I could spend my time working in this industry. There's always that pressure to keep up, but sometimes it's really nice just to play something that isn't needed now, mainly because you can play it and not feel like you have to have an opinion on it.
Exactly.
It's so nice to play something where you're like, fucking no one cares what I think about this because it came out 5 years ago.
Yeah,
no one could give a shit.
I've definitely been like side eyeing a bunch of stuff like that, but there still is too much to play. So
I have
eventually.
I've been playing a bit more Sea of Stars. I want to like it more than I do like it. I think it's like stunning. I think the combat system is pretty good. I don't know, there's just something about it to me. The writing isn't clicking with me. It doesn't help that like you can tell that it was written in a foreign language, then translated, and they didn't have a copy editor, because there are just like some very simple grammatical errors. And at first I like thought that was on purpose because, you know,
right, part of
it's
the
like
charm.
Throw back to those old RPGs, but like no, some of them are just like no, that sorry, I saw a thing in chat. I'm not going to talk about that. I was at a thing on Saturday, yelling at some people, but yeah, that was fun for me and for no one else. But yeah, it's. I've had a busy week. I haven't been playing video games though, so let's see how much news I've managed to keep up with.
Well, let's figure that out right now and explain what we do here most weekdays. I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Activision had a meeting with the Nintendo president in December. Switch 2 is similar in power to Xbox One and PS4. He found out as a result of that meeting. This comes from My Nintendo News. More information has come to light.
Mr. Activision himself?
Mr. Activision met. Yes, exactly. Dr. Activision. Dr. Vision. More information has come to light about Activision and Nintendo and the next generation platform, which sounds very much like a Nintendo Switch 2 and is widely expected to launch in 2024. The Verge reports today that Activision heads met with Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa and other executives in a conference call back in December 2022 to talk about the successor to the Nintendo Switch console. The news was shared in new redacted documents, which played part in the Xbox deal to acquire Activision Blizzard. Nintendo's next generation console was described as closer to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One performance. Activision executives, including CEO Bobby Kotick, met with Nintendo executives in December 2022 to discuss a next-generation Switch. In an internal email chain, Chris Schneckenberg, head of Activision's platform strategy and partner relations, prepared a summary of the Nintendo Switch NG, which is Switch Next Generation, inside a document labeled NG Switch Draft.pdf. The document is heavily redacted, but it does reveal that performance of the next-generation Switch will be like those aforementioned PS4 and Xbox One consoles. Lex, this is kind of right where we're like expecting this console to come in at, right? It's still going to be a handheld, still going to use NVIDIA chipset. We know, or at least the rumors have been, it's going to be an established NVIDIA chipset, not like the cutting edge one, so one that might be a year or two old or something like that. All of that sounds like, okay, if you're taking a mobile NVIDIA processor, it's probably going to be about a PS4, Xbox One, maybe a smidge more powerful, and then hope for NVIDIA magic on top of that, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I think the most fascinating part of this story is the idea of being a fly on the wall in the meeting with Bobby Kotick and Furukawa. Like, can you imagine the cultural clash that is going on there, and just the people who are probably underneath them very calmly trying to like make sure that they don't actually get into any conversation or anything. Just like, guys, just stay on topic. We know this won't go well if you get off topic.
I think Bobby Kotick is the kind of billionaire that like prides himself very much on being like, I can do business with any culture. I can go to Japan and do a business thing with them. I can like bow and all that stuff, and I'll learn all the things. And I bet he's like really slick about that stuff in a kind of a very transparent way, where it's like, oh, you took classes here. I see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bet Nintendo can also see right through that, and like, whatever, we have to deal with this guy. Obviously they've been doing this tour of showing key partners information about the next Switch for a while. December sounds about right. That is when rumors started picking up. I remember coming into this year, it's like, hey, for some reason everyone thinks we're going to see something about this console this year, and this is where that came from, where Nintendo started showing these key partners, which means they know eventually it's going to leak. so they're probably going to get ahead of it. It's all just like circumstantial evidence smashed up with this actual evidence. We're getting towards the end of the year. They haven't publicly confirmed it, but they definitely are showing it to more and more people, right? I mean, you were the first point of contact for reporting on that for Gamescom, right?
Yeah, and I mean the thing that I was told at Gamescom was like, oh, they're like announcing it at Gamescom, but the person who said that to me was someone who is very inside the industry. So I took that to mean, oh, they're announcing it to developers, they're announcing it to publishers, they're announcing it to retailers. And that seems like what they've been doing. They've been talking to everyone, and they've made their first showing, which is a non-public showing. And, we're getting different drips and drabs about, like, how powerful it actually is. I think it would be interesting if that Unreal tech demo that they said that they ran on it isn't playable on a PS4 or an Xbox One, as far as I know. So it is interesting that you have them saying, on one hand, it's about as powerful as those consoles, but also it's potentially running these games which seem to be a step above those consoles, whether that's just because those consoles weren't exactly like great consoles from the get-go, and these chips might be a bit more designed for gaming, and Nintendo might be a bit more equipped to be porting things to it. I don't know, but it is interesting that there's that slight disconnect in the reporting and the rumors, because usually that means that there's something on one side or the other, or somewhere in between, that we haven't heard yet, that we're missing out on information-wise.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be more details about all this. We're going to get the specifics, I'm sure, either reported soon or in some way confirmed by Nintendo. The next 6 months. That's maybe 6 to 9 months for sure.
It's going to be in the credits for Super Mario Wonder when it comes out.
Yeah, of course. That's where everything's going to be hidden. That's where all the secret. Jimmy Hoffa's.
They're just going to put they're going to put a big press release in there.
Exactly. This is where to find the
That's
new
where
voice actor.
The UFO evidence. Yeah, all the UFO evidence.
Scan this QR code and then go to the location, and then you're going to find the treasure there, and that's going to tell you all you need to know. For the Switch 2 itself, in terms like raw power, saying that it's about a PS4 or Xbox One, that's one thing, but you can get pretty, you can get close to the current gen systems in terms of running the same games with a few tweaks here and there. Obviously, DLSS is going to be the big one, but super fast storage could also help. Now, I don't know if I expect an SSD from Nintendo, like an NVMe SSD, a Gen 5 SSD, something that's like in these current systems or close to it. But for Nintendo, I could see them like using the next gen flash memory that's between what they were using on the Switch and what's in like an Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5. And if it's fast enough, I think most developers will be like, we can make this work for the most part, and then hopefully it has enough RAM, enough memory to make development easy for these games, because a lot of developers are going to try to put the games that they're releasing on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S onto a Switch 2. And I think Nintendo's got to keep that in mind, and I think Nvidia's probably got to have some solutions there to make that as easy as possible. But at the same time, I'm not expecting the Switch 2 to change the tune in terms of the support from third-party publishers and developers. I don't think EA is suddenly going to release all of their games on a Switch 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, when it comes to physical releases, do you think that they will use the same, carts, the same carts that they had for the Switch generation, or will they be a different thing? I know that there was the problem of like, hey, as soon as you get to a file size above 32 gigs, these get expensive and no developer wants to buy them, or wants to manufacture them. Do they make a push for, hey, developers, make all of your games online games, or games that you download, or do they have a different hardware solution for physical games?
Yeah, I think they probably end up using the same kind of game cards that they've been using. Likely what will happen there is it'll be mostly the same form factor, and they'll do what they did with Game Boy and Game Boy Color, where there'll be like a little notch or a knob at the top. So when you try to lock it into place, it won't go into the original Switch, but it'll only go into Switch 2. But if you put a Switch cartridge into the Switch 2, that will work. And I know I said cartridge, and I always say game card, and now I'm going to get
careful.
Trouble.
I was careful.
Yes.
You weren't.
Exactly.
You fucked up.
Yes, exactly. But we'll see. You're right. I mean, the problem that you just identified in terms of, hey, these games are getting bigger and bigger, and the storage for these game cards is not getting like bigger as well. It's not really keeping up, and if it is getting bigger, it's a lot more expensive. I think.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Theoretically, if we go into full, speculation mode, they are making that PS4 Xbox One version of Jedi Survivor.
Oh yeah,
that could come out on a Switch 2 console very easily then in that case, but like that game will still be over 100 gigs. Like they're not going to make that file size much smaller. Yep. So I don't know how. Again, the file size on the Switch has always been something that they've struggled with for third-party games because people just aren't as good at making their games as small. And like you see them talking to Activision, like, how small are Activision going to make the Call of Duty file size on a Switch now that they've made that deal with them? Like, will you have a situation where, oh yeah, you can play Call of Duty on your Switch, but you have, I don't know, 2 gigs left to play other things if you want to download anything else? Like, how much storage will actually be on this thing?
Yeah, the rumors right now is about 500 gigabytes, which would be a significant improvement over the 32 you get on the Switch. That's what comes with it. But we'll see, and that doesn't necessarily fix the problem of, okay, all these game cards are just going to be download URLs. They're going to point you to the store and then you download it because they're not actually going to be able to fit on a 32 or even a 64 gigabyte game card, which does exist regardless of what Turbo Sean might tell you. All right, so let's see here. Sticking with this, there's rumors that Baldur's Gate 3 will be ported to a Switch successor. This comes from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor. Baldur's Gate 3 is the RPG of the year, and depending on who you ask, it might just be their game of the year. We've already seen it jump to PS5, and before the year is out, it'll be on Xbox Series X and S as well. New rumors on the install base forum point to it coming to a Nintendo platform as well. As posted by user Astro Gamer, there's a special thanks credit to Etsushi Iizuka in Baldur's Gate 3, as Larian has worked with Nintendo getting Divinity Original Sin 2 on the Switch in the past. It is possible that the studio's latest game could be ported as well. Apparently, Iizuka has credits in a lot of games that get ported to Switch, kind of surprisingly. His name pops up in there a lot. Now, he's only in the special thanks section. This feels like a little bit of a reach, but I don't think it's some extreme reach, Lexi. This sounds like something like the special thanks, meaning we talked to Iizuka about the possibility of it coming to the Switch 2. Who knows if that's ever like going to happen? But they could still thank someone for having that conversation, right?
Yeah, I think this is one of those things we've had the conversation a few times where, like, these two things could be true independently. They could be thanking him for all of the help that he gave with Divinity Original Sin 2, and that probably did quite well on the Switch for them. And also, we could likely see this game come to a Switch 2. It's a game that, like, playing on the Steam Deck is spotty in places. It drains the battery like nothing else, but with the amount of time that they have to work on something like this, there's a lot of optimizing that they could do. Also, when you're building something for a set piece of hardware, again, it's much easier than when they're trying to scale their, PC version onto a handheld PC. But, I think if it does come, it won't be the best way to play it, but also if it comes and it's there at launch, it will sell like hotcakes because it will be a very big game next year. But when the end of this year comes around, people will be talking about Baldur's Gate 3 still in a Game of the Year conversation. And if the Switch 2 launches in March or something, then it would be no questions one of the biggest releases because people love big long games on their Switch.
Yeah, they do. 19 inches of Venom, and they love big long games. That's both of those things are very true. I think that Baldur's Gate 3 on the Switch also makes a lot of sense. It also would do very well. I mean, you're right. Coming out of the end of this year, it's going to be a Game of the Year talks. That momentum could carry forward into people being like, I like to play games on my Switch, and I'm going to be looking to get something with my Switch 2. And obviously, Nintendo's going to have a few things, but I'll try out a few other things because I'm so excited about this new hardware. So yeah, I
You know what,
can see it doing very well.
I'll
at that
just
time.
call up to Dublin again next weekend, and I'll like break into Larian's offices, and it'll be fine. I'll figure it out. I'll get to the bottom of this.
I bet their doors are unlocked. I bet you could just walk on in.
You know what? I was gonna say in Ireland they might be. In Dublin they wouldn't be.
Well, then there's just a little lock picking mini game you have to do, and then you can get in. That's the way it works. We probably do start seeing like this is the crop of games right now where it's like some of these probably do get ported to the Switch too relatively early on, especially if they're like a breakout hit like a Baldur's Gate 3. It's probably going to be the talk now. Do you think any developers are like thinking that like that far ahead? It's not that far ahead, but do you think like that they have that in mind, or is that something like, well, once we know more about the Switch 2, then we'll make that leap?
I think they kind of have to be, because you look at the indie games that came out the first 6 months, 9 months, a year on the first Switch. They fucking sold. Celeste,
yes, they did.
Enter the Gungeon, Oxenfree, those games sold. Golf Story fucking sold a lot. And then by time you got into year 3, year 4, all third-party games, not just indie games, really started to slow down sales-wise on Switch because that store is a bit of a travesty when it comes to like actual discoverability. But when there wasn't that many games on the store page, on the store full stop, when it was easy to look at every game that was on the Switch in the first couple of months, like the games that were there sold. It didn't really matter their quality. So I think now if anything happens, you're going to have a case where like everyone is trying to port their games to the Switch 2 when it launches, and you'll have a bunch of lower quality ports of games that probably shouldn't be on there. You'll have people trying to capitalize on that early install base because they know that the Switch 2 is a known factor this time. Like, the reason nobody had games ready for the Switch 1 was because they didn't really expect that much after the Wii U. They didn't expect it to take off like it did. So yeah, I think people will be much more tapped into it and ready for it, but also that might mean that we won't have the same breakout successes that we did for the original Switch.
Yep, I think that's all exactly right. I mean, timing is going to be everything on this stuff. It really was with the Switch launch of those games. I mean, Snake Pass, I think, is probably a game that that studio had to just have a huge payday when they were just, hey, we have a game, runs on Unreal, looks pretty cute and cool, and it's ready to go on your Switch, and people were desperate for software. There will be, you're right, they'll be less desperate this time because there's going to be more offerings because more people are going to know that people buy games on Switch. But it's not going to be like it is on the Switch today where there's 16,000 games to choose from on that store. I think that number's real. I keep saying it, and I'm like half joking, but I think that's right, actually. I think there's like that many games on the Switch, which is bananas. And if it's not right, it is some astronomical number. And even if all those games do get backward compatibility on the Switch, if every single one of them is on Switch 2, still having a game that is Switch 2 native in the first year is going to be a big thing. So
I do think one of my favorite recent things is like people in the Yakuza fan base saying like, oh, they'll never put a Yakuza game on Switch because Nintendo doesn't want those sort of games on Switch. And then you look at the Switch store and it's like furry fish fucker and shit like that.
Nintendo
and you're like,
care.
oh, yeah, hentai basement dweller, and you're
all
like,
those are
okay,
real. Yes, it's all real. Yeah, it's Nintendo used to have a reputation for being like, we're family friendly. We're gonna strictly control what is available on our system. And then in the last 10 years, especially 5 years, they're like, no, we probably shouldn't be the ones telling you can't buy things. Put whatever on the store. We have certain
Squid
lines.
Division says Mike Minotti games.
Exactly, Mike Minotti games. Minotti. As in N-A-U-G-H-T. Oh, why? That well done, Don Cabeza. All right, you know what? Let's take a quick break. When we get back, we got more news. Catch up on what Unity's done now. Unity, what have you done now? We're going to find out and more after this. We're back. We're back, and we're talking more video game news. I'm joined by Lex Luddy. Let's hop back into it. Unity apologized. We have to get through this. Lex, let's do it. Let's just do it together. Let's hold hands. Unity apologizes for controversial runtime fee, promises changes to policy. This comes from James Batchelor at gamesindustry.biz. Unity has promised to change its proposed new policy of charging developers a fee every time their game is installed, although it has yet to release the details of these changes. In an apology post on Twitter, the company once again acknowledged the ongoing backlash from developers who have expressed concerns over how install fees could financially cripple them, as well as the fact that Unity has retroactively changed the agreement originally made when they first started using the engine. "We have heard you," the company wrote. Oh man, that's just funny. Everyone's like, they're going to release an apology eventually where they say, "We hear you." And it's like, man, that's really what they did. "We have heard you. We apologize for the confusion and angst the runtime fee policy we announced on Tuesday caused. We are listening, talking to our team members, community, customers, and partners, and we will be making changes to the policy. We will share an update in a couple of days. Thank you for your honest and critical feedback." Of course, Unity announced that starting January 1st, 2024, it was planning to charge developers for every install their game received past a certain threshold. For Unity Personal and Plus subscribers, the latter tier of which is due to be retired, the fee would kick in after 200,000 installs and $200,000 of lifetime revenue, with studios charged 20 cents per install. Now, 200,000 installs for a game on Steam is a lot. That's a lot. That's like puts you in the top percentile games on Steam, and yet still, this was a strange thing to do. This lowers to 1 cent for Unity Pro and Enterprise subscribers with 1 million in revenue from the past year and lifetime installs of 1 million or more. Now, Unity has just been raked over the coals for this. I get the sense, Lexi, that game developers have been in this mind state of, the people that hate us the most are the people who are playing our games, but we can't ever talk shit to them because we will get they will throw a hissy fit if we were ever to say like one bad thing about the gamer or the consumer. Will be viewed as anti-consumer, all this other stuff. So we have to just always bite our tongue, smile, say the customer's always right, and try to like keep our heads down. And then a fucking idiot named John Riccatello at Unity is like, "I'm above you in the food chain, and I'm gonna fucking kick you, developers." And we know you guys never speak up, and it's like we'll speak up against you. You fucking suck, and we hate you, and no one like it. So it's totally okay if we come out and all band together and rip you apart.
We're not
which is what happened.
punching down if we punch you.
Exactly, we're punching the hell up, and we've been waiting for someone to punch for a very long time, and it was wild to see how many game developers came out and commented on this. Basically all of them came out and said, "We hate this. You have to do something to change." And at that point, I mean, Unity can try to like grin and bear it and just like try to get through and force this through, but they were irrevocably changing or damaging their reputation at that point, right?
Yeah, I think it was like Mike Bithell or someone on Twitter said, like, "I've never made a JPEG image post on this website, but I've been dangerously close this week." And it's like, yeah, like if fucking everyone is willing to wade into this because it's just so clear and obvious what it is. And I think like a lot of the people who work at Unity, pretty much 99% of the people who work at Unity agree with the developers. They know that this is fucked. They don't like the idea of this either, and they know how it would fuck developers. It's the people who want the bottom line to be increasing that are the most interested in this becoming an actual feature. I know that there's definitely Unity developers who were blindsided by this announcement and were like, "Wait, we're doing fucking what?" And like at that point, you have Unity people whose job it is to act as supports for these developers who don't even really know how to support the people because they don't know what the fuck their company's even doing now. It's a kind of universal hatred we haven't seen in a long time. It fucking sucks that developers and like people at Unity who work on the Unity product, who help co-develop games sometimes, who do porting work, who do biz dev stuff, the fact that they're getting caught up in the fire when they're not the people who made this decision. It's very obvious that it was maybe a handful of people at the very, very top that decided that this was a good decision and that this was a good way to try to make more money. But I think like the thing that people have also kind of not realized is like this was just for mobile. This was totally just for mobile.
It was almost going to affect mobile exclusively, right?
Yeah, and like the entire move was like Unity is biggest on mobile now at this point. It is the mobile engine for a lot of people, and because Unreal has become so competitive and because Godot has become so much more established, you have a lot of like PC and console game developers moving towards those engines and away from Unity. Unity was an extremely important thing to the early days of indie games, but it's much less so now. And I think that they are terrified of not having that cemented position, and by securing their place in mobile, like we saw last week when they were saying that they would waive the fee if you signed up for their ad revenue system, that they are purely going after the mobile developer market in this, and that they want to basically create their monopoly there. So they want to carve away the competition and make it so that is where they have their strongest base. But yeah, I think it's just fucking incredible that it got to this point. Like, you know for a fact that there were people who said several steps of like management and along the way were like, hey, you know this is a terrible idea. Like, everyone who wasn't at the very tippy top was like, hey, this is going to backfire on us, and this is going to look bad, and this is going to ruin our reputation. A reputation they work very hard on. They are at events, they have, like, they are taking meetings, they meet with developers that they don't even use their engine to talk about engines in general and what people would like out of engines
and stuff.
They help co-develop games that don't even run on Unity sometimes, and they do that work for hire. Like, Unity does a lot of things, and all of this has just like been washed away and basically become like pointless. Nobody cares about it, because all people are going to think about when they think about Unity for the next like 2 years is going to be this. I mean, John Riccitiello's stupid face.
Yep. It's going to be, you know, gamers have long memories, they say, and I don't know how true that is, but they remember certain things for a very long time. I think that for developers,
gamers hold long grudges.
Yeah, for sure.
Very short memories.
Yes, exactly. And I think for developers, though, you kind of have to learn lessons, right? You have to learn, like, what, you know, if I got burned touching that thing, I'm not going to touch it again. I have to find another way of doing it. And this feels like a moment where Unity has burned a lot of people. And they're like, I mean, you could say that we fixed the problem that burnt us, but you are responsible for creating that situation in the first place. You could do something similar again. And so we just, how can we possibly build our future with you? We're going to have to go in a different direction. And that's just like before you get into like the personal dislike for the way that John Riccitiello does business and the way that they're running that company and the way that the capitalist board that is like apparently a bunch of ghouls from finance and stuff running that company now. Yeah, people are going to have a personal a bias against working with Unity, and then they're going to have this experience of not being able to trust them. And as much as Unity can back off of this now, it's not going to change things. They've sort of sealed their fate about how they're going to be viewed for like the next 2 years, probably the next 5, even like 10 years from now. People are still going to remember this if Unity's even a going concern at that point.
Like, I think people really need to realize how rare it is for businesses and for people who are like Adam Boyes was tweeting out making fun of this, and like how rare it is for someone who is in charge of a company, who is high up in a company, to just straight up take a shot at another company. Because even if you fucking hate another company, there is a minute chance you might work with them down the line. But this has been such a wild move that people are like, no, even if we had the opportunity and even if it made sense for us to work with them, we probably wouldn't, because we disdain what the company stands for on such a personal level and is so antithetical to our own goals as a company and our own morals as a company. Like, it is wild to see people who run their own companies just like take shots at another company that they may have to do business with down the line because they've just said, fuck it, this is like too much. I don't want to play nice anymore.
Yep. And it's, that's a huge thing. You're right. Where it's a small industry and people do know that one day you're working on the other side of something. The next day you could be working with that person. That's very true. It's why you usually don't see developers comment on this stuff. But I think that, yeah, they have to, at a certain point, it's like about your values. And a lot of these companies and a lot of these developers are just like, this is such a violation of our values that we even if one day we were to work with any of these people, we would want it known that when we had to like say something, we felt strong enough that we actually would. And you need to know that if you're going to work with us in the future, because that was crossing the line. In terms of like setting up lines and boundaries, there was another story about this. Unity reportedly told developers that Planned Parenthood and children's hospitals were not valid charities. This is from Sophie McAvoy at GamesIndustry.biz. Developers of indie puzzle game Organizer have claimed that Unity said organizations like Planned Parenthood are not valid charities and are instead political groups. In a blog post, the EU-based developer Lizard Factory said the plans to charge developers up to 20 cents per install if they reach a certain threshold would cost them around 30% of the funds we have gathered and already sent to charity. As Unity clarified, the runtime fee will not apply to charity games. Lizard Factory reached out to the company to clarify their game would be exempt from the plan. However, Unity reportedly said their partners were not valid charities and were viewed as political groups. Profits made from the game go directly to nonprofit organizations, Planned Parenthood and C.S. Mott's Children's Hospital in Michigan. We did this to raise money for a good cause, not to line the coffers of greedy scumbags, the developers wrote in a blog post. We have been solid Unity fanboys for over 10 years, but the trust is scattered all over the floor. This is another, like, Unity would have been in this headache of having to define what they view as a valid charity. And like the very first time we have them come out with an answer, it's a very problematic one that is going to, yes, again, cause them major headaches of, so Planned Parenthood isn't a valid charity. What is in your view? And then now Unity has to respond to that. They don't want to be in this business. They don't want to be figuring this stuff out and having to take a political stance one way or the other about what a charity is and isn't, right? They had to want to avoid this.
I assume this is extreme mask-off moment for the corporation, where it's like Unity is a big corporation. They're obviously one of those companies that, promote inclusivity at every opportunity to their workers to try to attract people there because they know that people like that. But then as soon as they worry that it might affect their bottom line in some way, or as soon as it might be seen as taking a political stance, they back away from it in any external messaging that they give. And like, if you're working inside a Unity, not just like this is ghoulish, but if you're working inside a Unity and you're like, oh, this is what my company believes isn't a valid charity, like, why am I here? Why am I not looking for work elsewhere if the company that I'm making money for doesn't even like believe that a children's hospital is worth giving charity money to? Like, What the fuck are you doing?
Yep, exactly. And it's another bad look for a company that is just inventing new ways to look bad at every opportunity. We'll see what happens with Unity later this week. I'm presuming we're going to get this update on how things are going to change. Do they try to do a diet version of this still, or do they do a full walk back? We honestly don't know at this point. We're going to have to wait and see. Next story, Skate Reboot has parkour gameplay appear online. This is from Jordan Midler at VGC. Footage showing off parkour gameplay from the upcoming Skate Reboot has surfaced online. The footage, which has been circulating on social media, comes from the ongoing playtest that EA has been running for some time. These playtests, which have been opening up to more players recently, have consistently resulted in similar leaked footage. While previous Skate titles featured the ability to get off the board and run around the environment, this footage appears to suggest that the game will feature expanded movement options. The game is currently in playtesting on PC, although EA has suggested that a console playtest may follow. In a blog post reflecting on a year of playtesting on PC, the company told console players they haven't been forgotten. Lexi, I don't know how much of a Skate player you are. For me, I continue to like what I'm hearing about this game. So, I believe the rumor, maybe they confirmed it somewhere, that it's going to be free to play. And then it's going to be like kind of this hangout game where people can be making parks while people are simultaneously in those parks. And so you can be like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Someone could build that real quick, and then everyone, while it's being built, can be skating on top of it or climbing around it. And the idea of having like parkour as a way to like get around and be like, okay, now look, I'm way up here. I'm going to drop in on this because I was able to climb up and do parkour to get up here. That just sounds like a cool sort of in line with the way that people are, especially young people, are playing games these days. I really like this. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I saw Jan in chat saying that he doesn't need parkour in his Skibberd game.
Yep.
But was thou not thus the man that once said, "Mom's dead, parkour"?
I believe
So
he thou'th
yeah,
did. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
But yeah, like I've never been into skate super much. I've played a little bit of Tony Hawk. They're huge in both of them are huge in Ireland. They're a big part of the skater culture and how skater culture actually wound up here because it didn't make its penetration with a lot of the MTV stuff because we didn't have MTV here. But the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 were huge here. So those being some of the default games on that console or some of the best games on those consoles meant that that was where a lot of people's love for skateboarding in like the Irish punk scene came from. So I think I'm not super into it, but like some people will love it, some people will hate it, but that's the necessary risk you have to make when you are trying something different with a franchise that got stale. And they are trying something different, which I super appreciate with this skate. They're not just making another skate and releasing it. They're not remastering old skates. They made those available to play on Xbox, which was nice.
Yep.
But they're saying like, oh yeah, we're going to try to make skate for a modern age. And even if that doesn't work, they're putting time and effort into making something that is wholly new and approaches gameplay in a different way, which I super appreciate.
Yeah, and I think there's a space for skate culture to feed back into what skating video games can be. And I think the idea of we're hanging out all day, we're being creative, we're saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, and then we're making it possible or figuring out if we can, and we're spending an hour and a half trying to pull off one trick over a certain obstacle. That is the way skating works these days. It has for forever, but even like the competitions have started reflecting that, where it's no longer about these, there's definitely still like long vert runs like Tony Hawk used to do when he was dropping his 900s and things like that. But these days it's like, hey, best trick, just do your best trick. And it's like over very, very fast because you're just going over one thing, you're doing one move and that's it. And it's like, that's different than the competition I grew up of, like the X Games, where it's like, hey, you have 2 minutes, go back and forth on this street course, something that does still happen.
Skating for the TikTok generation.
Yes, yeah, maybe, yes, exactly. But I honestly, I think it's like it was always just, hey, can you do this trick? Well, like that was always the thing, and skating video games have somewhat enabled that. But I think doing that in a multiplayer setting, where everything is alive and everything can be picked up and moved around, just sounds like the right way to finagle that into a video game, and I'm pretty excited about it. All right, moving on. Xbox Game Pass has over 30 million subscribers, according to this LinkedIn profile. This is from Jez Cordian at Windows Central. Back in 2020,
that's a very funny source.
Yep.
For such a big number, this LinkedIn profile.
Exactly, and I think we'll talk about exactly that here, because there's an update to this story. Back in 2022, Microsoft confirmed that Xbox Game Pass had reached 25 million subscribers. The fact that it has only added 5 million subscribers over a year and a half later may indicate that it is reaching its potential addressable market, but this was before the release of Starfield, a major platform exclusive that will likely improve the service's fortunes. Either way, 30 million isn't anything to balk at. Even if 100% of those users were on Xbox Game Pass's cheapest tier, that is still amounts to about $300 million of revenue per month. Now, this comes from a LinkedIn profile that does describe Game Pass as having over 30 million members. That has since been removed. And Microsoft has responded and said, hey, we can only confirm the 25 million number that we talked about in 2022. Now, at the same time, Lexi, they've gotten rid of Xbox Live Gold and renamed that to Xbox Game Pass Core. And Xbox Live Gold probably had something like 30 to 40 million subscribers or something like that. Maybe another 30 million, at least. And so when the next time they announce those numbers, it'll be like Game Pass has 40 to 60 million subscribers, and they'll be able to just say that at that point, but we won't really know what it looked like from the 25 million number for real, because they're just adding in those Xbox Live Gold numbers. But I could see, even if they did get the 30 million, before Starfield, that's actually seems pretty good, because they didn't have much else, right? There wasn't much else to convince people to go get Game Pass, because the games they did have was like Pentiment, a smaller thing.
No, 5 million people wanted to play Pentiment. 5 million people love European history.
I hope so. That's what I
And
want.
they're all named Josh Sawyer.
Yeah, well, listen, there's a lot of Josh Sawyers out there for sure. Let's see. Oh, okay, Xbox Live Gold supposedly had 11 million as of 2022. Okay, that's that. I was gonna say 'cause there's like 40 million Xboxes out there, so about half of that. Okay, but that. So yeah, the next time they do announce it, it'll probably be like 40 to 45 million in terms of total. Yeah, this number though, the source of this number, I wouldn't be surprised if this was just the person estimating, and they don't have access to the real numbers, right? Because it's like you just look at it like it's like 25 million there. It's probably over 30ish million at this point. Whatever. It's my LinkedIn profile. I can say anything.
Exactly. I think people kind of forget that like writing a LinkedIn profile is kind of like selling yourself. And sometimes you take that a little bit too far, and you're like, what if I just like sold how fucking awesome the company that I worked for was? And then you are like, yeah, sure, why not? Like 30, that sounds about right. Like the last number they gave was 25 million. It must be above that since then. Like, why the fuck not? 30 million. And like, you don't think about it. Yeah, it seems like this is either a non-story because the person made the number up, or it's kind of a non-story because like, that isn't that bad. That's fine. You got 5 million people over the course of a year with like one big video game, and then Forza. That was and that's coming from someone who says I love Hi-Fi Rush. People started to think that like I don't like Xbox games. Hi-Fi Rush was one of my games of the year. Yes, chat also says Redfall. Redfall probably drove like 4 million of those people.
Oh yeah, it drove 4 million away. Cheap jokes. All right, let's move on here. Titanfall 2 has suddenly been patched, and gamers are crowding the servers because we live in a good timeline. This comes from Jonas Mackey at Game Reactor. Titanfall and its sequel Titanfall 2 are a bit of a sad story. Both games were absolutely brilliant, but never got the sales numbers they truly deserved, and a third game was never released. Instead, the spin-off Apex Legends is the only thing remaining today from the two classic titles. But without any heads up, Respawn suddenly decided to update Titanfall 2 in time for the weekend, a game that has been pretty much unplayable for years with broken servers, mainly on PC, and a fairly small community on all formats. And with things sorted out as well as a regular playlist update, players have returned. According to the Steam database, there was a peak of 23,234 concurrent players during the weekend, which isn't far from the all-time peak that hit 2 years ago when it reached 27,631 concurrent players. While we can't get such detailed data from the consoles, we tried the Xbox version and were quickly able to start a match, proving that there seems to be plenty of people playing the console version as well. Lexi, of course, people see this and they do what they always do with Titanfall, and they say, "Win Titanfall 3." And continues to be like, probably never, but definitely not soon. I don't think this changes EA's feelings on that all too much, but boy, it's nice just to see people playing Titanfall 2. And I'm going to go play some Titanfall 2 because of this as well.
It's nice that there's someone at Respawn, that there's enough people at Respawn who still care about that game, and that they have enough rope with EA that they can finally go back and fix it. And I played a bunch of Titanfall 2 in 2018 when I played it for the first time. I played a bunch more in 2020 when I just got a hankering to go back. I played it again in 2021, just the story for a podcast retrospective. That game doesn't fucking age. It's so fucking good. Jan says we should do a Thursday night throwdown with Titanfall 2.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
There for that.
Yeah, let's do it.
That game is so good on every. It's so good with a controller. It's so good with a mouse and keyboard. That game is just fucking incredible. Like the multiplayer, people talk a lot about the staying power of the story now because of how good that story was. But the multiplayer was by far the most fun Call of Duty style multiplayer in decade, since fucking, I don't know, whatever your favorite Call of Duty was that's colored by nostalgia. It's just objectively probably the best one of those. Yeah, and it runs at 120 FPS on Xbox now because they did backwards compat. Yeah, that game is great.
Yeah, I'm gonna go play some. I'm very excited. Yes, Thursday Night Throwdown is a good idea. I don't know. Here, someone in chat, let's see, in the Twitch chat, was saying that it's too short, the campaign. I'm like, it's 5 hours, like other shooter campaigns.
That's why it's so good.
Yeah, but like other shooter campaigns,
one sitting.
Like Call of Duty campaigns were only like 6 hours. Like that's just normal for that genre, I think. And also, yes, it's like so 5 hours of power is what it is, and I wouldn't
There
have
is
any
no
other way.
level in that game that you can't name an interesting thing that happens.
Yes.
Which is like basically like very few other video games have that, where each and every level has something wholly different and interesting that happens in it.
Yeah.
And like the speedruns for that game are still fucking wild to watch.
Yeah,
They
definitely.
are so good.
It's I mean, God, that was one of the best games done quick speedruns I've ever seen.
Oh,
for sure.
It was so good. But Bayonato's also just a great host. So that helps.
Totally. But yeah, listen, Titanfall 3 is something that they were working on, and they were going to put it in Apex Legends, and then they decided that would not be a good use of their money, that as in terms of an investment. And I think that really sucks that's how they're looking at it. It's like you got to be able to find a way to make Titanfall 3 make sense for EA, because I think that series probably would pop off with its next one, because the love has just grown so much over the years. But they're like, no, Apex Legends is our main concern, and if this can get us people in there, it'd be worth it. But then they're like, no, that wouldn't be worth it.
Do you think there's anyone at Respawn who's going like, hey, look at Armored Core, it was gone for a long time, it wasn't like a massive seller when it originally came out for the first 5 entries, but like people were fervent over it, and now the developer has a buttload of clout. Do you think there's someone at Respawn making that pitch of like, hey, we could do this with Titanfall as well?
I think there's probably someone like saying that pitch, but I think that it would probably not be too convincing, because the thing that the publisher could say would be like, that's FromSoft, and FromSoft is special, and Respawn's pretty special, but even Respawn's not From Software special in terms of the audience fervor for your games. People are still like, most of the people that play your games, Respawn, even they take a wait and see to like see if they're going to be excited about the final product. FromSoft fans just show up at this point. They put a game out, they're going to show up, and I think Armored Core 6 is like the best proof of that so far. But I think I tend to agree with you that like, hey, a Titanfall 3 these days would hit very different and much better than Titanfall 2 hit when it launched against a bunch of other shooters. And if it wasn't released
2 weeks before Call of Duty.
Exactly. Before, yeah, and right after your Battlefield game. So it's like, or Battlefront, whichever one it was. I can't remember, actually. All right, let's keep going here. Marvel Avengers is dropping to $4 ahead of being delisted. The delisting story is pretty old, but that is happening. The game will be removed from digital storefronts on September 30th. Between now and then, though, you're probably going to be able to get it for very cheap. Once it does go up the digital storefronts, you could still play the single player and the multiplayer. That'll still be active for quite some time. Maybe not forever. But that's got that. I mean, listen, if you care about those superheroes,
pick up that game. Yeah, pick up that game if you have any interest in superheroes, because it's one of the better tellings of Kamala Khan's story.
Yes.
It's a really good single player game if you just want to play through it once.
And at $4, that's how you should play it, and it's totally worth it.
Yeah, and it has one of the best video game dads of that year in Yusuf Khan.
Absolutely.
Just a great dad.
Star Fox programmer says he's sure the series will return. This comes from Chris Scullion at VGC. Star Fox programmer Dylan Cuthbert says he's sure the series will return at some point. Cuthbert previously worked at Argonaut Software and was one of the main programmers of the original Star Fox. Despite being one of Nintendo's most recognizable brands, there hasn't been a new Star Fox game in 7 years. The last was Star Fox Zero on Wii U, which was met with a mixed critical response. In a recent interview with VGC, we asked Cuthbert if he expected to see Star Fox coming back at some point soon. Cuthbert replied that he did, but stressed that he didn't feel previous Star Fox games had managed to capture the feel of the first game. Oh, I'm sure it'll return, Cuthbert told us. I mean, they keep trying, don't they? They keep trying, not quite achieving the original. But I think that's one thing. My opinion is that the original was born out of the UK Amiga-style 3D at the time, games like Star Glider or Carrier Command. It was born out of those and a bit of the Star Wars arcade game, combined with Namco's Starblade. And then there was all the Nintendo character building, all the characters and stuff, making it very family-friendly. Cuthbert explained that, in his opinion, modern Star Fox games have each missed at least one of these elements, meaning none have recaptured the tone of the original. I think Star Fox 64 was pretty close, Dylan, but I definitely get this take, and I think that that Dylan's probably right in that we will see another Star Fox, but like, what does it look like these days? Dylan Cuthbert goes on to say like it'll probably be very similar to the original, but like built with modern sensibilities on top of that, whatever that might mean. But I think that's probably the right answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Star Fox is one that I've never really gone back to or played, because it's more of a novelty to me of like looking at a SNES game that like has 3D graphics. I understand why people like it. Dan says a Star Fox roguelike. You ask for that, but
that
like
fucking rules. I do ask for that. What are you gonna say?
I don't know that. There's something about like the idea of Nintendo doing a roguelike that like I don't trust them with it. I don't know why. That's like one of those genres where I'm like, I'm not sure if Nintendo quite understand the appeal of this genre.
Yeah, have they done anything like that before? I guess Star Fox 2 was kind of roguelite-y, right? I can't remember. Star Fox 2 had a little bit of those elements. But I don't know.
They should add more furries into it.
Oh, without a doubt. But then that just makes me want to be roguelite anymore.
We were just talking about games coming out in a different era and being received very differently.
Oh, yes.
In like a post-furry acceptance world, Star Fox
Slippy Toad
really...
hits different today. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Slippy Toad does hit.
Yeah, does hit. Yeah. Oh, hits. Would smash. I think that I would die for Star Fox roguelite. I'm just imagining getting like a really powerful build on one run and just going and going. God, that would be awesome. Just make it Hades as well. Have on-foot segments with Fox, and then you get in the ship, and then there's stuff there as well. All right, we got to keep moving.
They made it like a 3D Metroidvania that's like, you know, like The Legend of Zelda, and you get out of the ship and you can explore an alien planet.
And then speaking of furries, they're going to be very happy with Crystal. And there's it says dinosaurs. Yeah, you might be onto something there. All right, I included this story because you're here, Lexi. Fans still clamoring for a Simpsons hit and run remake as the game turns 20. This is from Andrew Heaton at Destructoid. Basically, the PlayStation UK account was like, hey, that game's 20 years old. And everyone's like, please remake it. And then Lexi stood alone being like, that game's floaty and isn't very good. Mike got real mad at you about this one.
Like that game. I got like that game. I played so much of that game as a kid, but going back to it, it is like that game is very simple in a lot of ways, and it's not that deep. And playing it in the modern age, it feels like an old game, and it's hard to go back to and enjoy in the same way that you can go back to something like, I don't know, Silent Hill or Metal Gear, where you're like, oh, this is timeless. Like, no, this has a time, and it's like 2004. And like, that's great. Sometimes I wanted to be back in 2004. I was doing jack shit in 2004. I was like spinning in circles, shitting my pants in 2004 because I couldn't control my bladder yet. But like, it was a great time in my life. But yeah, like, I don't know. I think people ask for that game to be remade or to be remastered, but what they really want is they want like a remake. They want a full, complete remake. Because if it controlled the way it did then, it wouldn't be received in the way that you think it would.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you see that Mike got mad because I didn't defend the game, but I think I mostly agree with what you're saying. Like, I don't know if I go to the extreme of it's so of its time, but it's definitely it would need to be touched up, I think, for it to feel great as a release today. I still have fun with it when I go back and play, but I think I get bored pretty quickly when I play the game, which is why I haven't played it through all of it again recently.
I think the reason I have fun when I go back with it is because it's The Simpsons, and I love The Simpsons.
Yes, the world building stuff is actually that carries that game easily, and then a lot of it, it's like not fine. It's fun. It's a fun game. It's a fun game to play. It's just not like enrapturing it or like easy, a game where like where I personally am going to like lose a bunch of time in, like a GTA or something like that.
We talked about this when you were playing Bart vs. the Space Mutant. There hasn't been a new Simpsons game in over 10 years now. Tapped Out was the last one, and like, how long do we think it is before they finally go back and they make an actual new Simpsons game, or are they just like, we don't need games, we just sell our merchandise?
I do think they're going to remake Hit and Run.
Much money.
I do think they're going to remaster/remake Hit and Run, and I bet that happens in the next couple of years. Like, that seems like the kind of thing that a John Drake would like check mark as like, this would be a pretty cool thing to pull off, and I bet I know the people who to talk to make that happen. So yeah, I think Hit and Run is the answer there, because it's like there's enough nostalgia, there's enough excitement, there's enough demand. And I think that if you do it right, you can definitely make that edit that game slightly to make it even more fun than it already was. Okay, poll question from yesterday. I'm going to bring it up right now. And I said yesterday, I meant Friday. Will you be upset if Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door is 30 frames per second? 31% said yes. 69% said no. I would upset is maybe strong. I'm going to be disappointed because the original game on GameCube was 60 frames per second. That's the big thing for me. If this was like, oh, the game was always 30 frames per second, this one is 2, that's still a little disappointing. But anytime you go backward, like, yeah, the assets have been updated. They're not that updated to justify a drop to 30 frames per second on a Nintendo Switch. So,
sorry.
Okay.
Gotta tell people why they're wrong.
Here we go.
It's not just about it looking smoother. These games have the timed inputs at 30 frames per second. That means you're going to have a smaller window to hit these timed inputs. It's going to be harder. Also, just the fact that it used to be 60 FPS. It's ridiculous if that game actually comes out.
Now, Sean, why is Mike wrong?
No, Mike's right on this one. I came in to say, you said cartridge, you stupid son of a bitch. I heard you.
God damn it.
I was buying toothpaste at the grocery store. You thought you could take pot shots at me?
I was so hoping I would get away with it. Son of a
ran
bitch.
back home so I could yell at you. That's right. Definitely not because we have a meeting in like a minute. Anyways,
I hate this show.
You suck. Hi, Lexi. Bye.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the people were wrong. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys. I can't believe I said cartridge. I'm so mad at myself. I knew Sean was going to hear and give me shit. All right, let's see here. I have a new poll question going up here in a second. But before we get to that, and while I'm doing that, Lexi, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet?
You can find my work going up at Polygon in a couple of days' time, hopefully, if that piece gets up. It's being edited and going through their system at the moment. You can also find me at Start Menu. I run a website for young journalists trying to break into the industry, having a safe and inclusive space to work with an editor and get used to getting into the industry and find opportunities. You can also find me on Twitter at basically Lexi, both spelt with I's. And also, just as a reminder to everyone viewing, get your nominations in for the Game Awards Future Class and MVC 30 Under 30. If there's anyone that you know that you like their work, that you think they're doing good stuff, and you think that they're like nice people making the industry better, nominate them for that, because outside validation is super rare in this industry. So yeah, I spent my afternoon nominating like loads of people for that, now that I have a computer again. So go do that if you have the time.
It turns out external validation and external, not punishment, but consequences that's it all. I need both so much to do this because with the ADHD, I'll put things off for forever unless it's like, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't do this. So external consequences and external validation, huge for me.
Someone who like works in a different industry, who works in the sports industry, who's like a reporter, complimented my work, and it's maybe the best I ever felt because it's like, oh, you don't give a shit about this, but you still liked it. That's amazing. It's very nice when people say nice things about your work.
That means also criticism is also welcome. If you want to criticize me, feel free to do that as well. But it's better when you say
with long hair.
Yes, it's better when you say, Jeff, you didn't say cartridge, you said game card, and that's right, because that's what they are on the Switch. Okay, let's see. Lexi, we got to get out of here. What's happening on Giant Bomb? We're going to go figure that out in that meeting that Sean was talking about. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I'm not in those meetings.
I think we're going to have a Blight Club. I think we're probably going to have a voicemail dump truck, UPF, all that stuff will be happening all week. Game Mess mornings, we'll be back Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, probably with the regular crew. I'm very excited to talk with Lucy and Tim if they're back and able to do it because they've been playing some games. I really want to get their opinion on that. Then Bombcast tomorrow. Tune in for that. That'll be noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Everybody, we're going to get out of here. Lexi, thank you so much for speaking with me about video games. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye. I forgot the new poll. When is the last time you played Titanfall 2? You can vote for that on youtube.com/community/ and then under the community tab there /giantbomb. All right, bye, everybody. Till next time. We did it. We got through it.